Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2024, your first edition of your daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. I am Jer Stays and Fletcher Sharp. What a weekend of football. I think we just got to start there. So from the Daily Detroit studio at Techtown, Fletcher Sharp, let's talk about it.
The sports was really sports in this weekend.
Let's talk about the Lions, because that is what this entire town is buzzing about. The end of that game, 2019. Of course, the Lions did lose to the Cowboys. If you're not plugged in, I don't understand. Even if you're not into football, I feel like this is the story of Detroit. Was that a blown call with Decker? Did he report? This has made national news. It's everywhere. Did this call get blown? What do you think happened here after looking at the tape, looking at Troy Aikman saying, hey, what else would they be doing but reporting? Even people like Skip Bayless are like, oh, he got robbed. Like everyone's jumped in on this one, Fletcher Sharp.
I will first state my opinion real quick. Originally, I said if he did not report, if he didn't, then that's a penalty. But all indications point that like Dan Campbell said something before the game, like, hey, this guy is going to be reporting to you late for a trick play. During most of the game, they had a skipper, number 70, come in and report just as like a something. At the last play, or the third to last play, he came in. Decker reported for himself, and skipper came over like he was going to report, but did not say anything. That's what everyone says except for Brad Allen.
Listen, if Brad Allen comes within 100 miles of Detroit, people are going to launch him in a cannon to the moon.
Worse than Santa Claus in Philadelphia, which, for those who don't know, during a game, Santa Claus was at a Philadelphia Eagles game, and they just started throwing batteries at him. Like, it's gonna be worse than that for sure. They might literally draw and quarter him on the field. Like if he shows up, I might be catching a crowbar. All indications look that Decker did report. If anything, he could have done more. It would have been like, hey, no, me. But also the reason why that they had skipper report so many times during the game and then Decker at the end was they were trying to confuse the defense. And the downside of trying to be too cute and tricky is sometimes you trick the people you need to not trick. A great example I can think of earlier on this year, they were playing against the Seahawks. They had a play where Jared Goff did a play fake for a handoff so well where he gave the ball and went back to throw. The defensive end for the Seahawks drilled him and got up and started celebrating because he thought he had a sack until he looked down and saw a flag. And they're like, unnecessary roughness. And he's like, for what? Then he saw the ball up there. He's like, oh. So, like, yeah, that's the downside of being tricky is sometimes you're a little too tricky and you trick the people you need to, like, not trick. But, yeah, Brad Allen did not have a great game. Not even just for the Lions. There's a few calls for the Cowboys that went the Lions' way that, upon replay, really should not have. I'm no one for conspiracy theories, but I will say in his career, he's reffed 6 Lions games. They've lost all 6, and the penalty yardage between them is like 450 to like 220 to the opponent. So like that's not great in his capacity. People are calling for his job now. I think they need to reassess a few things before they do that. I think it's kind of a bit too quick to do that. I'm not having his back. He had a horror show of a game.
He's had a few horror shows of games this season.
I mean, even last week, there's a play call against the Chiefs where Valdez Scalding was very much held with the ball in the air that was catchable, and they called it incomplete. And Chiefs fans like almost blew a blood vessel in their forehead. So like, I get it. The punishment they gave him so far is his crew is not doing the playoffs, which I think right now is like, that's good. Come off season, reassess exactly what he needs to do. If he's so adamant that he didn't make mistakes here, even though he's been like very obvious, then that's when you then remove him from his position. But like if he comes in and he's like, I will do better, I need to do this, and understands what he's doing, maybe a probationary period where it's like, hey, maybe you're a side judge or maybe you're a line judge, so you get to put the white cap back on because you made some horrible calls, man, and they drastically affected some parts of the game. But in my opinion, still, the Lions did not lose because of that play call. But they had 2 chances after that to win, and they had chances before to win. And obviously you can't crystallize something into one play, but the one that sticks out the most is early on, Dak Prescott dropped back to throw, and Barnes comes in to make a hit. And I don't know if he got scared about getting a roughing the passer call, because I know they've kind of been key on hitting the quarterback, even when it looks like it's a football hit where you don't understand why it's a penalty. But he came in, and as he got to Dak, kind of shied away from contact a bit. Like, it looked like either he tripped or was like, ooh, I don't want to hit him as hard as I'm going to hit him, which would have been a safety had he brought him down the end zone, which is 2 points for Detroit. He whiffed. Dak took 2 steps to the right, 2 steps forward, lobbed a bomb to CeeDee Lamb, who then went 92 yards for a touchdown. 9-point swing right there. You could have killed that drive off, got a safety, got the ball back right then. You didn't. They scored a touchdown, kind of back-breaking. It's early on. You can come back from it, but it sets the tone that, like, we're going to have a problem. They can air it out, and which they did. CeeDee Lamb had 227 yards in a game.
CeeDee Lamb beat the Lions, not the Cowboys.
Yes, it stunk that happened. When you have your cornerback one and Cam Sutton, who was not on him for that long touchdown play, but when you have him, the guy you brought in, who's been doing well, on their top receiver, and he goes for like 100-something yards and makes him look like he's tackling ghosts, that's why you lost. Like, if there are other reasons, but that's the main reason. If you stop him, it's over. If you stop CeeDee Lamb, none of the other receivers can do that much, and they could not do that.
You stop CeeDee Lamb and take 50 yards off his total, and you win.
Yes, and like it stinks that because you don't want to put the blame on any one player. Like that's an entire defensive scheme thing. I'm not going to blame Aaron Glenn as like a whole for that, because the defense played well in other parts. But if you see your cornerback getting put on a spit roast, like, hey, send some help. Like, maybe put a safety over the top and let Cam get a bit more physical. If he gets beat, there's a safety there. Or maybe put Cam on the outside and force him inside and have a linebacker there to do some help. But he's like, we're going to keep him on single coverage. And they're like, okay, keep him on single coverage all you want. I'm going to keep throwing the ball to him. He had 13 catches. Like, that's a lot of times to be targeted. That means at least he was targeted at least 13 times, probably more than that. And, like, they didn't have an answer for that. To the point to where, like, the guy's laughing at you in the middle of the game. Like, that's when it's like, hey, fix this. Fix it, fix it, fix it.
What about those 3 attempts to try to get into the end zone? We talked about the penalty call, but a lot of people are saying, hey, what is Dan Campbell thinking? I was in the drive this morning. You're 7 yards out. Why are you still going to go for 2? Just go for the 1 and go to overtime. In my mind, I'm like, you sign up for Dan Campbell. Safe is not what you get. And the reason why Dan Campbell's here is because he takes those risks. But sometimes they're not going to work out the way that you planned.
I love it. I understand why some people are like, just go for the 1 point and, go to overtime. To our most previous point, they had not stopped CeeDee Lamb. If the Cowboys had gotten the ball first, they would have won the game. The Lions would have gotten the ball first, they might have come down and kicked a field goal. If the Cowboys get the ball first, they're going deep to CeeDee Lamb. No one's going to be there to help, because obviously they're showing they're not going to put over-the-top help, and he's going to saunter his way into the end zone, and they're going to lose in a much more back-breaking way. And honestly, at this point, one, like you said, Dan Campbell is who he is. He's someone who's like, he's at, playing blackjack, he's got 20, he's like, hit. It's like, why? It's like, just hit. I got an idea. That's just who he is as a person. But 2, they've won the division. They've been guaranteed a playoff spot, been guaranteed a home playoff game, at least one. They lose. Worst case scenario, they finish in 3rd. Best case scenario, if they win, they are the number 1 seed for a little bit, if maybe a bit more if the 49ers lose. So, like, there was a bit more to gain than there was to lose. I get it if they were like going to fall to the playoff position, go to overtime, see what happens there. But here, if you can kill off a game against an opponent who's kind of got your number on the defensive side, you can kill off the game. Finish it there. And if you don't finish it, that stinks. But if you do finish it, he's a genius. He's a ballsy genius if he does. So I understand exactly why he went for it. And I honestly love it. That it shows he is who he is. I mean, he was doing this when they were bad, still going for it, and it looked not great because most of the time they didn't convert. Now that they're doing it, he's kind of earned a bit more leeway to be like, you know what? It's worked out a bit more in the past. As a kid say, let him cook.
Before we talk about the Michigan Wolverines and that nail-biting win, Vikings-Lions final game of the regular season.
I mean, they want to get the Lions back. The way they lost kind of left a bad taste in some of the fans' mouth. They would like to get this win, and I mean, it's really more for them to do, keep their hopes alive. Probably not going to happen. Losing to the Packers was not great for them. This game matters for the Vikings a bit. You're going to see the Lions probably pull a few starters just to make sure they're okay. I would like to see them keep Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in. They have a chance to become one of the only team with a 1,000-yard receiver and then 2,000-yard rushers, which in NFL history, which is cool. And if they get Sam Laporta to get like 160 yards this game, they'll have 2,000-yard receivers, 2,000-yard rushers. So like for just cool purposes, that'd be a good thing to see. But you'd rather them be healthy going into the playoffs than, have an accolade and someone blows out like a kneecap or something. So, I mean, expect the Vikings to really try to bring it. But I'm sure the Lions will be happy to. They want to win the game, obviously. No one wants to like lose a game. But I'm sure if this is, a close one, they'll live with that a little bit.
Let's talk about Michigan. That was great to see the victory. Overtime, thrilling, ran real late into the night. And you posted about this on Threads that Michigan gritted down and got past Alabama. But that wasn't a pretty game. And I have concerns going against the Huskies.
Number one, I'll admit I picked Alabama to win. And the reason why is Alabama and Georgia and other SEC teams, when they play against the Big Ten, will have the toughest Big Ten team there, and it'll devolve into a rock fight. And the Big Ten team will pick up like a pebble, and the other team will pick up a boulder, and they'll just dash their head against it over and over and over. Last night, however, when it got tight and got late, Michigan's one rock, Blake Corum, who had not had a great game, put together probably, not to use a hyperbole, but probably one of the most iconic runs in recent Michigan history. He had a nice little jump cut, got within 5 yards of the end zone, and then broke multiple tackles to show he would just not be denied. And while he did not have a great game, more like 22, 23 carries, about 90-ish yards in that one touchdown, when it mattered, he came through. And that's what's never really been the case against Michigan SEC teams in the more recent history. It's been, okay, pressure's getting late, something's going to happen, and then they get beat. It's kind of why, you have to go back to the Lions. Aiden Hutchinson, who is a tremendous talent. They played against Georgia, and he got manhandled. He got made to look like a small child, and I was like, yeah, lights got too bright for him. Obviously, that was just Georgia's offensive line, because now that entire offensive line is in the NFL, so that's a different story. But you see these big players for them just crumble, and it makes you worry a little bit, like, is this going to happen again? And when the game started off, it got a little sloppy. A muffed punt. You're like, oh no, they're getting, as Bomani Jones would say, they're getting lemon booty. So like, what's going to happen next? They figured it out, capitalized off some mistakes. Jalen Milroe did not really help with that really odd fumble that helped Michigan, kill some more clock. Kind of like the Lions game. In a game that came down to the last play, really weird play call by Tommy Rees and Nick Saban. They went with a QB power up the middle. Which would have been an all right play call, except for two things. One, the center snapped the ball at Alabama quarterback Milroe's feet. And secondly, kind of reversed what I said with Aiden Hutchinson, with him getting dominated by SEC player. Alabama's big 5-star right tackle got blown up into the play by a 245-pound Coastal Carolina transfer from Michigan. Just ran through and just put his hands in him and moved him back like he was a cartoon person. Like I was stunned at how. Looking
at that play, I was like, why did you do that? The whole time I was like, why did you do that? Because Michigan's been strong the whole game.
I mean, the play design was not a bad play design, but had the ball been snapped not at Jalen's feet, but at his chest,
which was a problem all game,
would have had probably a better chance. But as someone who's been in a position not like that with like the stakes being high, but as someone who's been in a position to receive a snap at your feet, you might have like, okay, I'm running an option play. I get the ball. I'm going to go to the left, go to the right, flip the ball here. The ball comes at your feet or comes too high. You take your eyes off the field for a second. You go into panic mode. Like I got to get forward. I don't want to get hit blindside. It's not fun. So he goes to his feet and he just runs straight forward. And of course, because he ran straight forward and didn't follow the guard who pulled, the tackle got blown up into the play, and that killed the play right there. But again, that shows Michigan, instead of, wilting, flexing some muscle. And the one worry I do have for them going into the game against Washington, while Washington is more, I don't want to stereotype the Pac-12 or the Pac-10, however the Pac how many numbers they have.
And Washington's coming to the Big Ten next year.
I don't want to stereotype them because those teams have changed. They are more of a spread it out type of team. And the quarterback for Washington is someone that people from Michigan, the Big Ten, should know. Michael Penix Jr., who transfers from Indiana. He has one game against Michigan back during 2020, during the COVID season, when Indiana was ranked. He went for 30 for 50 for 400 and something yards, 2 touchdowns, and a victory over Michigan. So he has history over beating the Wolverines. Not all the players are the same, but like some of them are. And the goal to beating Washington is just containing them. And when you need to score, scoring on them.
And this is what frustrated me about Michigan. I'm really glad Michigan won, but that game with the six sacks, I want to say, something like that, Michigan missed a lot of opportunities to then score after stopping the drive. Washington's going to make you pay. Michael Penix is a far better quarterback than what we saw out there on Monday night, and he will make you pay. And I have more concerns about Washington by far than I did about Alabama because I'm going to get hell for this. I know I am. But J.J. McCarthy's inconsistent.
I mean, he is. When he's good, he's good. Coming into the season, they're like, oh, he's got a chance to be, on the quarterback list. I was like, what quarterback list? The list of quarterbacks who could be great, but also could all be terrible. But he's been playing well for most of this year. But he showed late. He had some big throws that showed someone's a keep NFL quarterback. I'm like, yeah, an NFL quarterback, and then he's on someone's roster. I don't think he should be anyone's starter come the next season or the next few seasons. But he's improved drastically throughout the year. He's made some great throws, made some great plays, made some weird decisions that turned out well. So he's got to bring his A game. You got to chew up the clock. Blake Corum has to have 35 touches to keep Washington's offense off the field. That's really, you got to just bleed the clock. Because as Michael Penix showed, you give him a chance to throw deep, he will throw deep. He'll find his receivers, Polk, and like it's not going to be great. Got to put pressure on him and got to just keep him moving. And one of the downsides is with him is if you keep him in the pocket, he might struggle a little bit. If you make him run around, that's when he's his best. So you got to like contain him. Like it's called like a kind of a mush rush where you run in there and instead of just flying by the defender or flying by the tackle or flying by the guard, you go in there and you kind of just wait to see where he's going to go. When he goes, then you go. If he doesn't go, you stay right there in front of him. Of course, typically you don't do that with quarterbacks. You want to make him move. But Michael Penix has shown like he will get on the wing to run and he can throw on the move. And like that's a dangerous thing because when you throw on the move, it pulls the defense out of the way because they see you go into the line of scrimmage. He's going to run the ball and you whip it 40 yards down the field. Your receiver doesn't stop running. The DB might look her back, kind of like what happened with the Lions in Dallas. Once Dak broke that tackle in the end zone and threw the ball deep, the cornerback for the Lions kind of lost containment and then fell, and CeeDee Lamb was all by himself. So you don't want to see Michigan lose that way because that would be backbreaking.
But I think Michigan can win this without a doubt.
Oh, they can. As long as they keep the time of possession in their favor, they run the ball as much as they can. When they get stops, they capitalize as much as, even if it's just a field goal, you capitalize and get something. You can't get a turnover. You can't stop them and then give the ball back without scoring points. Because as we've seen, Washington can give up points quickly, but they can also score very quickly. And football's a game of momentum. If you get scored on like 3 straight possessions, your team will hang their head and you'll have to dig out of another hole that you put yourself in. So if they can do those things, limit their offense, I see them, winning a championship, which would make some people uncomfortable. I know there was one guy who went to the Rose Bowl and like, I don't really want to talk about people's money because it's their money, but like this guy's kind of a loser. Went to the Rose Bowl with his wife, made custom shirts that said, "I'm rooting for Alabama" as an Ohio State fan. And I was like, you flew all the way to Los Angeles to not watch your team play, to very publicly make some custom shirts that say, "I'm rooting," and then you had to lose. Like, how does that make and you had to lose? You had to lose there. People get to laugh. Like, I wish I had money to do stuff like that. Like that boggles my mind. But yeah, if they can contain Penix Jr. and they can keep the offense off the field and chew up some clock and convert, they'll have this championship.
Before we go, the Pistons have broke their losing streak. And here's the thing, Fletcher. I wonder if people care about them less now.
Oh, not a wonder. They do. They do. I was talking to someone about the Pistons who played this weekend. They played against the Rockets, and someone's like, "Oh, they had a game," and I'm like, "Yeah, they lost." And they're like, "Oh, all right." That was the end of the conversation. People don't care anymore, and like not to, like it feels bad to like only care when it's like going bad.
Devin was rooting for all the way losses, although he also predicted that even if we only won like 2 or 4 games, that we still wouldn't get the lottery pick.
Oh, and I don't think so either. To be a young player on that roster has to feel terrible. Like you finally get the win to break the streak. Now you're tied for like the worst losing streak in league history. Own the losing streak for one season, the worst one in league history. And you have a game afterwards and people are like, all right. I mean, there are some storylines. Asar Thompson playing against his brother, Amin Thompson. The Rockets had Cam Whitmore, who a lot of people thought that the Pistons should have taken. There are some storylines here, and no one talked about it. Only thing people want to do is make Wingstop jokes, or like Wingstop has to give up all those wings now that Pistons have actually won. Like if you Pistons win, show up, get 5 free wings. But for 28 games, wasn't the case. So people want to make jokes about that. But once they have another game going forward, people are like, oh, they played?
It's like the cheapest promotion ever for Wingstop.
It really is. And like if they don't fix some things going to the end of the year, people better really appreciate the years they have with Cade Cunningham. He's not going to resign his next deal. He's not going to stay here. And I honestly wouldn't fault him. And if Monty keeps acting the way he's doing with Jaden Ivey, he won't either. And that would be another situation where they had.
So you think Cade's going to go?
It's just like what happened, with the Lions, with Barry, or with Calvin, or with other teams that have really great young players that they misuse, and then they go somewhere else and play great. And like you acknowledge their greatness while they're here and you're unable to do something for them, and they go somewhere else or they retire, and then you have a big hole there. And like I wouldn't fault Cade. Like the game after the Jazz where they lost and the game after Boston, he looked like he was going to cry walking up. And I understand entirely because that game was frustrating. And during the last part of the streak, especially when Bojan came back, Cade was doing all he could. Like he was putting up at least 32, 33 points every night, 5 or 6 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists, making threes when he could. He had some turnovers, but that's because he was forcing stuff because no one else was doing anything else, so he had to. And like, if you're going to keep him do this for the rest of the season, and you're not going to get any help, and they're going to keep running these weird schemes that put you in positions where you're not going to be able to succeed, especially now, the one good thing that came from the loss when people were watching the losing streak is the rest of the league realized how good Cade Cunningham was. Like some people did not understand. They're like, oh, he kept losing. But they see he's doing all he can, and like they're not helping him. I don't see him coming back after his rookie deal's up, and I would not blame him at all.
Well, how do you all feel about that? DailyDetroit@gmail.com, 313-789-3211. Fletcher Sharp, good to spend some time with you, man.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully this year is as good as last year's was, because I think last year was a good step forward for the entire program.
100%. With that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Fletcher Sharp.
From the Daily Detroit studio at Techtown, remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.